Hi, my name is Cel, and I'm your host for the SweatNet Be Amazing podcast, where we share stories of amazing women who live in our communities. My hope is that you will feel encouraged and inspired after listening to each episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Be Amazing podcast here on SweatNet. I'm your host, Cel, and I'm so excited you've joined me today for another episode. Before we get to who the guest is today, I want to talk about the Be Amazing pop-up 5K run walk that's happening on October 15th. You can run anywhere at any time. We do have some pop-up locations that we'll be putting up on the website, which is beamazingweekend.com. This is all to benefit girls on the run. And I want to shout out one of our sponsors today, Premier Gynecology and Wellness. I'm so excited to have them a part of it, and the support we're getting from the community is amazing. Registration is $25. It includes a hoodie or crew neck, you get to pick, and then everyone that registers will automatically be entered into a drawing, and the winner of the drawing will win a Be Amazing jacket by Nuvo Athletic. So make sure you go to beamazingweekend.com and register right now. Okay, so let's talk about my guest today. And today we're having some real talk, real conversation about women's health. My guest is Dr. Liz Moran. She is the owner of Premier Gynecology and Wellness. She is a wife, a mom to 2 girls, and y'all, she did Dancing with the Stars Charlotte, benefiting Carolina Breast Friends in 2020 and did an amazing job. Well, today with her, she's going to be helping me with answering questions about perimenopause, about menopause, about the signs and symptoms, and a lot of things that aren't even talked about. We're going to discuss on this podcast today. So you definitely want to stay tuned. She's going to talk about treatment, and then her whole goal is for women to find balance and live healthy lives. So stay tuned for this incredible conversation with Dr. Liz.
Welcome to the show, Dr. Liz. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Cel.
Yes, this is going to be so much fun. And for those of you that are listening right now, Dr. Liz is a gynecologist, and she is my gynecologist. So I'm happy to have her on and answering some questions. But before we get started with that, tell us a little bit about who you are.
So I am a native of Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been in this area my whole life. I had been in a hospital-based full-service OB/GYN practice for about 11 years prior to opening my own independent medical practice. And I have a husband, Kevin, who is out at the golf tournament today enjoying that. And I have 2 girls, Molly and Catherine, that are 11 and 8.
That's awesome. So you're balancing being a wife and a mom and a practice, which is a lot.
Correct. I mean, you just got to roll it all in.
And I love that I had somebody on my podcast earlier this year, and it was Heather, and she is now working with you at your practice.
Yes. So I was solo. I opened Premier Gynecology in the fall of 2018 and was solo until looking for the right person. The type of practice that we run really needs to be a really caring environment, and we take a lot of time with our patients. And Heather Graham, came along at the perfect time, and she had a soft start with us in December and has been, ramping up to full speed this spring. I was just with her in the OR 30 minutes ago, right before I hopped on this podcast.
Well, it's so much fun because I know both of you, and both of you are amazing women. And so the fact that you're working together and she's working with you is I think it's incredible. So I just encourage anybody to go check out your practice online and schedule an appointment. If you don't have a gynecologist already, you need to go to Premier Gynecology. So,
well, thank you. We have a lot of fun. We really do. We laugh. Our staff knows our patients really well. It's a joy to come to work, and hopefully our patients feel like it's like the world's dreaded appointment, to go to the gynecologist. You might have pap smear, blah, blah, blah. So our mission is to make that really fun and easy. And we certainly hope that we do.
You absolutely do. And I appreciate that because you're my doctor. And I know when I went, it was last year, it was January of last year, before everything went crazy, that I came to you, and you just made me feel very comfortable. And so I have, I really appreciate that because I do think it is that thing that as women, we do either dread it or stress over it. So you took
Totally.
the stress right out.
Well, and what I say to patients all the time, and Heather, Dr. Graham agrees with me. I mean, I live on planet Earth along with everyone else. I mean, I'm balancing everything. I'm getting older. Things aren't exactly where they used to be. I mean, I hate getting my own paths. No one likes to be a patient or feel like they're under a microscope. No one wants to feel vulnerable, but we are right there in the mix. I share a lot of personal stuff with patients, just I want people to feel comfortable and know that doctors are people too, and we're going through the same thing.
Well, I really do love it and appreciate it. So, with that said, what for you, or when did you know that you wanted to be a doctor, and specifically with gynecology?
So, both of my parents are physicians. They're retired now. They're rheumatologists, which are sort of autoimmune disease specialists. And so I grew up very comfortable in the medical world because that was like what we talked about around the Thanksgiving table. And anyways, when I went to undergrad at Duke, they have a really strong science program, and I was always interested in it. Oh, a fun fact is that Heather Graham, my now partner's mother-in-law, was my high school biology teacher. We
Oh,
didn't
wow.
figure, and it's hilarious. We didn't figure that out for a long time. So I've always been interested in the sciences. And so I did pre-med in college, and then went to medical school really with an open mind about what I was going to practice in. And then as I went through the rotations, OBGYN definitely took the lead by the end of my third year. Um, it's interesting that different personalities fall into different fields. And I really like that. I also really liked emergency medicine. I know it sounds strange, but a lot of people find themselves deciding between those two. They're both procedural. You get to interact with a lot of different people. I like building relationships with people over time, which is why OBGYN won out over ER, but I didn't make that decision until I was a senior in medical school.
Okay. Well, it's funny that we're talking about this because my son is actually, he just graduated from nursing school, and he's a tech in the ER in Pineville right now. And he, had to do his rotations and stuff. And he's like, Mom, I just love ER. Like, I just love, just the fast pace. And
Yeah, you
that's really
find
what he
your
digs.
Totally. You find your tribe over time in medical education. There are a couple of branches that you decide, whether it's nursing or PA or medical school. It comes together for most
Yeah.
people. But I didn't go in to medical school with a particular penchant for women's health per se. I think that evolved over time.
And I feel like that you're very passionate about that now, even more so, with
Yes.
having your
Oh,
own practice and what you're doing now.
yeah, definitely. You start in a field with one idea of what it's going to be like. And I mean, had you told my 25-year-old, even 30-year-old self that at, you know, 13, 14 years into practice, I would be doing office-based gynecology for adolescents and perimenopause. I mean, I would never have believed that. But it's evolved over time, and I think I found my stride. And it's not an area that everyone likes, and that's fine because I like it. So it works, and there's a need, and I think it's great to find a, for me, at least now in my old age, a smaller scope that I do better is what I like more than trying to do everything all the time.
I think that's true with anything. It's like you narrow it
Yeah.
down and find out what your lane is and what your fit is, and your fit, like you said, you're fulfilling a need. But at the same time, I think that gives you fulfillment and purpose.
Yeah, I agree with that. I talk about that a lot with patients. I mean, I don't have any special training in psychology, but I laugh all the time that I'm a gynecologist. I mean, that's sort of what we do, right? We're women, and we talk about, all the stresses in our lives, and, with work changes. And I share frequently that, you know, for me, it was a lot hard. It's a lot harder, I think, to zone in on what you want or what you're good at than it is to decide what you don't like. A lot of it's easy to say I don't like this environment or this job or this whatever, but what do you like is a harder thing. And for me, that was a very organic process that took place over really a decade. I mean, it wasn't like woke up one day and said I'm going to open a office based practice. It was definitely a pathway. I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, because I feel the same way. Like, I love all of fitness, right? So I love everything that has to do with fitness. And it's taken me a while to kind of narrow it down where I fit in that world. Like
Mhm.
what is my, what is my go-to? What is my spot? And it's women. I care about women. I care about helping them as far as like bringing women together, and that we, I love having boot camps together and all kinds of fun things, but it's always geared around women. I've trained everybody, but it's
Mhm.
really come down to just doing things specifically for women. And mine right now has even narrowed down even more to like ages 35 to 55.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that spot right there is my sweet spot.
I think it's a really great analogy. I think, it's a broad, there are two broad fields, and you have a passion for, a field, and then gradually figuring out what you're good at and what you enjoy, and getting better at fewer things. I think it involves less headspace for me. I'm sure it does for you. I'm not reinventing the wheel every time I go into the office. And there's a narrower skill set. And I think going into a narrower skill set in more depth with more tools in your toolbox can be as rewarding, if not more, than being all things to all people, and maybe less exhausting, frankly.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Well, I really want to jump into talking about hormones, since we're talking about women. And this is something that I run into all the time. And this is the reason I came to you last year, is because, when I was 36, I was premenopausal, and, went through a major hormone balance, and then leveled off a little bit, but then came to see you because I had additional things going on. And I was like, I need some help. And, but just kind of share with us about like how hormones shift and change, especially for women in their 40s.
Right. This is a great question. And for some reason it's just like a black box out there that is not really widely known. And I think maybe because the focus of women's health has been a lot in the childbearing time and childbearing years, and then you might finish having your family or not decide not to have a family at all. And then you're kind of like moved over into the next section. And then it's a little bit vague about what happens next, as far as the progress. So, you know, there are many hormones that men and women share, but specific to women are the ovarian hormones, and as they relate to menstrual cycles. And your periods are nothing, this is if you're not on birth control, they are nothing more than your body's response to an ovulation event that's not fertilized. So baby girls are born with all of their eggs, and they are just not activated until puberty. And then this is on average, is released monthly, but that's a very complicated signaling mechanism. The brain signals the ovary to grow the egg. The ovary is signaling the uterus to grow a thick lining. And then the brain signals the ovary to release the egg when it's large enough. And if it's fertilized, it can grow and implant in the lining. And if it's not fertilized, then the lining sheds. And so it's a complicated series of interactions that takes place over on an average 28-day to 30-day time period. I mean, that's different for everyone, but that's a basic what's going on. So in an analogy that I use a lot is that in your reproductive prime, and on average, that's probably 20 to 40, somewhere in there, that your cycles are pretty regulated because ovulation is pretty efficient. Everything's kind of doing what it's supposed to do. And that's sort of like riding the lazy river, at an amusement park. There's some twists and turns, but for the most part, it's fairly predictable. And then menopause, the average age for that is around 50, but it's definitely a bell-shaped curve. I think earlier menopause is under-recognized, and we can talk about that separately if you want to. But what that means is that eventually your ovary will ovulate its last egg. You only have so many in reserve. They don't go on infinitely. And after the last egg is released, there are no more periods because there's no more stimulation from the ovary as far as the lining is concerned. And so the hormone levels, whereas you were getting estrogen and progesterone in waves, is now going down because they're not being made naturally anymore. But so if you consider that to be like Amtrak, like, we were on the lazy river, and then menopause is like Amtrak, it's sort of even. Perimenopause, which is sort of what you asked about, I think, kind of that 40-year-old time frame, is where you dabble in both worlds a little bit. So there are still hormones being produced and there's still ovulation. Cycles may be pretty regular, but things are not as efficient as they were. And so there are fluctuations within the hormone cascade that are definitely noticeable, with changes in cycles, changes in sleep patterns, maybe changes in mood, skin, all of this is this is a real thing. I mean, the ovary very rarely goes from fully on to fully off. There's a long period in between, maybe even 7, 8 years on average, that it's like a flickering bulb in the background. And that's, I think, where you might be getting questions from clients that are seeing you. By definition, if they're 35 and older, they're in the flickering bulb stage. I mean, you might have a few unicorns that are going to trot through, until they're 55 and not, like, have no problems. But most mere mortals that are in the above 35 age group definitely have some changes. It's not like a mental thing. Everything's changing as far as their hormone patterns, which of course impacts the rest of their body and their well-being.
Yeah, you're really addressing the questions that I did have because, and I'll just be open and share my experience. So I went, like I said, I went premenopausal at 36. My hormones started going crazy. I was gaining weight, sweating like in the middle of, the coldest
Right.
time of year, and just would break out in sweats. Like there was, all of that going on. And, I finally got put on some medication that helped level me off. And then when I came to you last year, I came because, and I'm just going to be straight with everyone because I think this is what this is about. Sex became very difficult and it was really painful. And you started to tell me about, that because of the hormone levels and I was in menopause, that the lining was thinner. So that's something that really hasn't been talked about. And I've had some women ask me or even say, hey, does this, they ask about different signs and symptoms. And so I would love for you to share a little bit more about that.
Right. So the thing that gets all the press in movies, in conversations, is sweating, hot flashes, night sweats, those sort of things. And that's true. So as your estrogen level starts to drop off, the most noticeable first sign as you're really entering a later phase of perimenopause, which for you, Cel, was early. I mean, most of my patients are starting this around maybe 46 or 47 on average. But those are what we call vasomotor signs. That's the sweats and the dripping sweat. Not everyone has these to, an extreme degree, but that happens first. And if they're extreme, most women will think to ask about it because it's impacting their life in a dramatic way. And hormone replacement can ease that off because you're just giving back a little bit of estrogen to kind of get you back on lazy river, so to speak, for a while. Well, what happens eventually is that you adapt to the new normal. It's really the transitional phase between ovulatory cycles and no ovulation that is really the most dramatic as far as the systemic symptoms for most people. So what'll happen is sometimes there's a few years of severe sweats and et cetera, and you might take hormone replacement or take something that might help. And then you're kind of like, okay, I'm through it. I'm good to go. And you are, for the most part, for the systemic symptoms. But what's not talked about is that the vaginal tissue, the lower part of the vagina, the vaginal opening, the labia, those are all highly hormonally sensitive tissues. I mean, they're like that. So in childbirth, they don't explode when something comes through. I mean, they're elastic. So they are designed to accept hormones, and that changes the elasticity and the lubrication of the area. I mean, it's all designed around reproduction. So when menopause happens and it goes long enough that you don't have estrogen anymore, your symptoms, let's say, of hot flashes have resolved, and you don't want to be on medications, nor should you be if you're not feeling like you need them. But that the vagina does not get the memo. Like, it continues to, and because humans have sexual activity past menopause, like, Cel, I don't know if we talked about this, but humans are the only mammal that do this. I think there's one species of whale that has menopause, but it's unique to humans that you would have sexual activity past the point of reproductive time, because other mammals continue to menstruate until the end of their life, which is kind of weird, but kind of interesting if you think about it.
Mm.
So what you what you can wind up with is that the vaginal tissue, because of lack of estrogen over time, can lose elasticity, it can lose moisture, it narrows down, and that does make intercourse painful. I mean, you can't out exercise your way through that. Maybe even bladder incontinence, losing your urine with coughing, sneezing, jumping. A lot of that's because the tissues become thinner, and almost everybody benefits from supplementing either with topical treatments, or there are lots of options for that vaginal dryness piece that gets almost everybody eventually. And there are lots of options, even patients that don't need systemic hormone replacement or don't want to take it, there are safe options for that as well.
Now, this is great conversation, and I love the fact of you, kind of like really tackling this like head on and being able to talk up front about it, because like you said, there's only certain things that people associate with menopause or associate with
Right.
that, and they
You're
don't, it just stays in like this,
you're you're exactly right. And so my strategy is I start talking about changes that might happen with perimenopause in the mid to late 30s. I don't go into it in great detail. They kind of look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, I just had a baby. What are you talking about? But it's just to sort of set the stage. And then that's a piece of the conversation that comes up every year in the 40s. So I can sort of assess where things are with them as far as their symptoms. I would really prefer to be proactive and optimize the situation on the front end for that individual patient, rather than try to see somebody who hasn't really seen really address this 5 years down the line, because then we kind of have to, we have to deal with kind of backtracking a little bit. But yeah, so I do have some patients, they're like, I'm not really having hot flashes, my cycles are spreading and spacing, like I think I'm good. I'm like, I agree. Just remember, like, this can be a problem, and I'll ask you about it every year, and it's not because I want you to feel like you're old. It's because I want you to feel like you're young, and so we talk about it proactively for sure.
and that's what I appreciate. And I appreciate the education, because you do take time to really, get into detail about the human body and how women's bodies, work. And so that was really super helpful for me. And then I'm able to share with somebody else like what I'm going through. But
Right.
now I'm on the other, instead of coming to you when I was like, having a really hard time, like now we're being proactive.
Right. Like now we have a plan. We have a
Yeah.
plan, and we can manage it. And the other things that I mention when we talk about menopause is, like you said, the hot flashes, the sweats, get the press, but because these are due to hormones, they're not in isolation. Hormones by definition just means a messenger, a signal messenger throughout your body, and that links many different organ systems. So it's impossible to talk about menopausal transition or women's hormones without addressing the how that influences metabolism, how it influences sleep, and how it influences mood and anxiety. All of these things go together. We can't treat one of them in isolation, which probably comes up a lot in fitness.
The weight loss part, yeah, or somebody gaining weight, or all of a sudden their body, like where they're holding weight, because I think that's interesting, where women will hold weight is different as well.
Absolutely. So what happens is, as estrogen levels become more fluctuant and progesterone levels become more fluctuant, leading towards menopause, women become more insulin resistant. And the cells that are particularly prone to this are around the midsection. They're around the abdomen. It's no longer really the butt or legs. It's more around kind of the gut area. And people that have always had a thin waist are like, why am I SpongeBob SquarePants? Like what happened? And those cells are particularly prone to it. So as when you eat sugar or carbohydrates, your body receives that food as something that elevates your blood sugar. And when you're younger, you can handle that differently. And as you get older, and especially when your hormones start shifting for a variety of reasons, the cells don't respond as well. So your body secretes more insulin in order to bring your blood sugar down. So whereas your smoothie might have been well metabolized and really healthy in your early 30s, in your mid 40s, to your body's new language, looks like a giant carb load that it needs to deal with. And so it secretes more insulin. And when you have high levels of insulin, that tells your body to store whatever those calories are as weight around the middle. So it really, truly, the language changes. The analogy I use in the office all the time is your body starts slowly playing chess, but you keep playing checkers because you didn't get the memo about the new rule book. Like the board looks the same, but it starts to get really confusing about, about what's working.
And it's so true because there have been women that, and this will even be myself, like my whole workout life has changed, has had to change, and my eating has had to adapt to that.
Right.
So
the days of jogging it off are long gone. I mean, that's a young woman's game. Like absolutely do the cardio, ladies. Like it's great for your brain. It's good social time with your friends. Like get on the tennis court, go for walks. Like I encourage cardio to be social, but the hardcore exercise or the real way for body transformation is in weightlifting. This is just the unfortunate truth. If you happen to be like somebody who loves jogging, by all means, still do it, or the Peloton, or play tennis, or pickleball, or whatever. But it's not gonna give you the body changes that you want because it's not playing by the rule book that your body wants. I know that's frustrating, but I think most of managing aging gracefully is learning what the new normal is and optimizing that, not trying to keep going back to what used to be the case.
I love this conversation because weight training, and especially now, like I did a lot of it in my early 20s, then kind of backed off and stayed with more like HIIT and stuff like that. And I still do a lot of that, but now I've refocused back into weight training, and it does make a difference. And
absolutely. And these are light weights. I mean, for your listeners, I mean, really the only way you can actually bring up your metabolism is to increase your skeletal. Did I click off?
No, you're here.
Okay. Is to increase your skeletal muscle mass, which will help your basal metabolic rate. And you lose muscle in favor of fat due to hormone changes. So it's not just I got busy and lazy and COVID hit and, my kids are doing 500 sports and that's part of it. It is like this comes at you at a time of life where you're busy, but a lot of it is outside of your control. And the other piece that I mentioned, so we really have to change our diet and our exercise in order to play by the rules that our body wants. That's absolutely important. And the other piece of the puzzle that happens, whether it's recognizable or not at first, is while hormones are fluctuating, that directly impacts your REM sleep overnight, your amount of time you spend in deep sleep. Even if you're not necessarily waking up all night or having insomnia, you're probably by having less deep sleep after age 40 for most people. And I encourage you to consider getting a Fitbit and checking this out over time. It's really interesting. And when you're getting less REM sleep or too little REM sleep, you're waking up in the morning and your cortisol level is elevated, which is your stress hormone, because your primitive, hormones are messengers from our primitive brain. This is from this was an adaptive system that helped humans survive, but now we have to manage it, in this kind of current world that we live in. And if you wake up in the morning already with elevated cortisol, that means your body's already in fight or flight mode. It's already ready to pile on weight, make you grumpy, reach for the carbs. So it becomes, you really can't dissect one without the other.
Yeah, it just turns into a vicious cycle. And
absolutely,
you've addressed everything about our health. Like you've addressed, eating a healthy diet, lifting weights, and getting good sleep. And those are like the three things that we do have control over.
Absolutely. I think in order to manage midlife transition, you have to have a plan, and it has to be realistic. Like if someone comes in and they just will not accept life on planet Earth from their age, I mean, I'm just not a great fit for them, because I'm not going to say that I have a magical pill or a magical solution for XY, because that's just really disingenuous, to be honest. I mean, for most people, they're the occasional patients that have an endocrine disorder that's misdiagnosed, but In general terms, it's just accepting life beyond 40, accepting perimenopause, and learning the rules to optimize that. And it requires work the hard way. I mean, CL, name anything that doesn't require work that gets you results. I
Oh,
mean,
it's
there's not much out there.
No, it's so true. It's everything requires work. And I think even as women, you're here in your 40s and you've been, whether you're raising kids at this point or you've been raising kids, up to that point, and you've had the job and all of that and the workouts and all of a sudden you feel like you're like, oh my gosh, like I've got to do more work. But it's the reality of it. Like you have to work for what you want. And if you want to feel a certain way or be at a certain place in your life, you have to put in the work. And that's always the hardest thing to accept.
I agree. And the way I look at menopausal management is that there's no magic pill that's going to make it better. It's impossible. I mean, it may make the hot flashes better, but it's really not magic. What I try to do is help women work smarter and not harder. So, let's optimize what's going on with your hormones. Let's optimize what's going on with your metabolism. I mean, I've been known to give non-diabetic patients a glucose monitor to get data about their diet, and that's really helpful. And then to optimize what's going on with your mood and stress management. Those things have to be at least in a reasonable place, or else nothing is going to touch it. And that's just the reality of it.
Again, what you're saying about hormones, and I didn't take this to be a serious thing, when I first started training people and when I was in the field and fitness, and people would come up and say my hormones are out of whack, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you just whatever. But just the experience I've had, and then as as I meet more and more women and the discussions come up and questions come up, it's like, yeah, hormones are a real thing, and they're very sensitive, and they're very like easily thrown off.
Right. That's a great point.
By anything. Like one thing can throw you completely off and you feel like, what is going on? So I feel like you're really helping answer some of the questions that I've had and other people have had.
Well, I think, when we think of hormones, women think of that as it relates to their ovaries. They think of that as being, is my estrogen off? Is my progesterone off? But the main hormones to focus on are, the gonadal hormones are important, but so is cortisol. That's your stress hormone. That's what goes up when you're stressed out, when you're not sleeping, when you're inflammatory responses are up. And that's 100% a hormone. Insulin is the second most important hormone. That's what's having to do directly with your diet. And those things are, really important. And I think optimizing that will help get all of the rest of it to fall into play. But what women do, we do this all the time. We take care of everybody else. We don't sleep because we stay up late. So we can, make sure that we do the Excel spreadsheet for the soccer carpool. And then we just eat on the go. And then we do make time for the gym, but then we get frustrated that it's not all like coming together. And it's, it's a bigger picture. I will say that of the spectrum of menopausal transition, the perimenopausal, that means one foot on both sides, where you're still cycling probably, or have just stopped cycling. There's about a 6 or 7 year. That is the hardest to manage because the signals your body's putting out are confusing. The other side, like once menopause is firmly established, you've had no periods for several years, the sleep and hot flash, for the most part, that stuff gets better. The acute anxiety, the diet thing, I mean, that stays with you as you age. But that does get better. I just want to reassure people that it's not going to be like miserable work to live in your body for the rest of your life. And did you notice that, Cel, with your transition, that you were like, okay, I feel better from all these aspects, which kind of led you to neglect the nether regions, so to speak, because you assumed that was going to follow along. So, but that's the one piece that stands out lifelong, but that's really kind of easy to manage. It's the rest of it that's harder, I think.
Yeah, no, I feel like a different person, as far as like, there's, I don't have all like, the cramps are gone, and I don't have all the hot flashes anymore. I don't have like the craziness of like, one day I feel on, the next day I feel off. Like I feel more level than I ever have. Like,
yeah, ladies, please know the other side of this thing. Like when we get you off, like, you're on Lazy River, and then you go through a period of like Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and then we get onto Amtrak. Amtrak is cool. We got to juice up down below a little bit. Like, I'm going to be honest, like we got to keep Amtrak juicy. We got to keep it juicy, but
that's the best way to put it.
But the middle of the road, which is where most people are probably finding UCL because they're feeling like they don't quite have a grip on what's going on, is the hardest part, but it's the part, it does not last forever.
Yeah, and you're so right. And I can attest to that. So like I'm on Amtrak. So we're doing
Totally.
good.
The juices are flowing.
Right,
Excellent.
we're doing good. We're doing good. Well, I just really appreciate you sharing all this, because like this is just real stuff. And I just think that a lot of times things get danced over, or people are just, they're not talking about all of it that's involved. So and the information that you gave us, as far as like, I feel like this is what you are saying to all of us, to what we can do on our own, working up to coming and putting a plan in place with our doctor, is, eating healthy, go to the gym and lift weight, making time, go to the gym and lift weights and get good sleep. Those would be the things that you recommend. Would there be anything else that we can do?
Yeah. Make a budget of how you're using your emotional spending. So this is what's hard for women in their 40s. You have more responsibilities than probably any other time in your life. You're caring for a lot of times children, spouses, aging parents. You kind of have the most touch points, and really taking an inventory of how you're spending your time, where are you distributing your stress, where you're stretched too thin, because that emotional piece of it, and the anxiety, I think a lot of it comes from having too many things to do, too many needs to be met, and not enough resources to meet them. And a lot of times women come into me, they're completely burned out. They've been doing way too much for too many people. And I think a gift every woman should give themselves on their 40th birthday is taking stock, like you would balance your checkbook, budget your emotional life. Do the kids really need to be doing 3 travel ball leagues? And, do I need to do X, Y, Z? And there's some things that are non-negotiable. There are things in our lives that responsibilities that as grown adults we have to do. There's a lot of other relationships or activities that probably don't need as much attention. And I really think cleaning house and really balancing the emotional spending budget will pay you back, because then that really, really can help with stress management.
And I think that's just a perfect, way to balance out all the other things. And like it is taking care of yourself. And because you hear self-care now, that's a big word. It's a buzzword. It's put out there all the time. Self-care. I think this is a huge part of that.
And absolutely. And sometimes I think self-care a lot of times is less. If something that you're putting in the self-care column is actually more work, it should really probably be less. It should be knocking responsibilities off your to-do list more so than adding things per se. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I like that so much better, because I feel like as women, we're like constantly adding, but we never take anything off. We just keep adding to what we have.
100%. So if self-care is, I'm going to exercise 3 times a week and get on a good skin regimen. I mean, all of these things are great self-care. I'm going to, have lunch with a friend twice a month, where we don't talk about our kids or spouses. Like these are all great things. Well, remove a bunch of things. You're no longer in charge of the Valentines at preschool. Like buy some, get rid of that sort of thing. Outsource what you can, and remove half of these engagements on your calendar. You can probably go through and strike half of them off, or a quarter of them off. And so for everything you bring in, it's like your closet, you need to feng shui your life for sure, to the best of your ability. We all get overwhelmed at times. And I don't begrudge anyone that, but I do think I don't have any magic sauce that can solve an emotional spending problem. That's tough. That's a hard one to overcome.
Oh, this is awesome. I'm going to switch gears on you now.
Okay.
So we're going to leave the doctor side, because we're going to talk about Dancing with the Stars Charlotte, benefiting Carolina Breast Friends. And I was lucky because I had a freaking front row seat, and I got to watch you dance, which was amazing. But good. We have a guest speaker. I love it. Yes. she has her dress in the background. Like, I absolutely love it. Like, your
So
dance
funny.
was so much fun to watch. Lady Gaga, like, amazing. And the eyepiece you had was like on point. I thought you would wear that forever.
Into the office. Hello,
Yes.
ladies. Call me the menopause magician.
Right. Well, what was that like for you? Because have you ever danced before?
No. I have never danced before. It was, it was I'm really glad I did it. It was a fun experience. It was definitely, to practice what I preach, it was a lot on my plate at the time, in a good way. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun to be in front of the audience. I thought it was a good sort of self-challenge. I enjoyed it. It was great. I wouldn't take up ballroom dancing like as a hobby, but I thought it was a lot of fun.
What did you find the most challenging part? Like, because it's a 6-month time of like training and fundraising and all of that. Was there something that was the most challenging for you?
Probably just managing the time commitment. Like that was the hardest. We started training just as from the time I accepted to do it to when it started happened to just coincide with a like logarithmic almost increase in busyness of the practice. Like we've been open just the right amount. So of course it was like everything coming full circle at one time. So managing the time aspect of it with, I don't have the type of job that's flexible really. If I've set a block to see, I need to be there. I can't work things out that are in the middle of my day typically. So that was the hardest part. I thought the people that I interacted with and the whole process was a lot of fun. I mean, I didn't take it too seriously, but I also hopefully it looked like I put in the time that I had.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely love the routine. And all the people that I've met through that experience, like it's an amazing community to be a part of. And there are people that, I feel like will be in my life forever.
My patients loved it. I have to take care of I have a big survivorship aspect of my practice, and they just thought it was like the coolest thing.
Oh, I bet. It was awesome.
They thought it was really fun. Yeah.
It really was. It was awesome. Well, let's go on to the next thing, which is like, what is your favorite workout or activity you do now?
So this goes back to what I know I need to do and what my life looks like and what sort of time I have. So I work out currently with a trainer, and for right now, that is worth it for me to have somebody that comes to my house on my schedule. And we do simple stuff, light weights, reps, mat work. I mean, it's basically Pilates mostly. I try to do that 3 times a week, sometimes only twice. And then I do one day on myself, and it's basic stuff, squats, lunges, planks. I need somebody to hold me accountable, but traveling to and from a workout studio or something with set times is, at least in my life the past few years, has been difficult. So I would rather budget money towards that. So I do that about 2 or 3 times a week. And I try to get most of my cardio by walking or hiking. So I try to do something active most days of the week, but I am 100% in the camp that it has to be weightlifting that makes you tired at least 3 times a week to see any tone and definition.
That's awesome. And it's so cool to hear you say that, because not only are you telling people, and sharing that in your office to patients and clients, but it's something that you actually live by as well, that it's just as important to you.
It really is. I'd rather spend that on myself that way than a pedicure or massage or something else. So I just budget for that, and it's not inexpensive to have a trainer, but it is the only way I'm going to do it. And you know what? I'm worth it. So that's what I'm going to do.
That's awesome.
I love classes too. I mean, I really do. It's just a matter of practicality when you add in the travel time, and for where I am now, maybe that will change as things get a little bit less hectic at the office as I add in doctors.
Yeah, I think it's true for anybody. I have found myself doing less of going to classes and stuff, not because I don't want to, but because of time. I just run out of time. So it's like I've had to shift what I do as well.
Right.
And make decisions on, well, you know what, I can do that, you know, to maximize my time, that I can do it here at home, or I can, you know,
Right.
go outside.
And
so
I'm not going to do it by myself. I'm going to like watch Netflix. So
gotta have that accountability, and that's good.
Exactly. It's 100%. So yeah, exactly.
So do you have a favorite song? Is there a song on
I really like all music. I love working out to Motown. I think is fun because I'm an oldies. I sort of am an old soul when it comes to music, and I listen to a lot of Motown. I listen to a lot of classic rock. I love the Rolling Stones. I listen to that a lot when I work out, which I know is super weird, but you know, it gets me pumped up. So there you go.
No, I love it. That's awesome. Well, before I let you go, is there anything else on your heart you'd like to share with the women that are listening?
I would just like to say that this is a season in life that can be challenging in so many ways. Or what I mean by that is that the 40s, kind of this transitional time, there are a lot of demands. Your body's changing for real, and your things that used to work don't anymore. And I know a lot of doctors just don't believe that. They'll say, well, just eat less and exercise more. And it just doesn't work as you get older. And I 100% believe my patients when they say, I am not eating any differently or exercising any less, and I just can't get the scale to go the right way, or I just feel like I'm not sleeping well. I mean, these are absolutely real things, and you deserve to be heard about that. There's nothing that anybody can do that I'm aware of to make a 45-year-old body a 25-year-old body, but we can optimize it. It's worth optimizing it. It's worth investing in yourself. It's not as hard as you think. I mean, it just involves a mindset change, I think, and some good help from some, there's some good pharmacology too for some of it. And you should feel your best. It's great to be over 40. I love being over 40. You can finally, kind of just do the things that you want to do for the most part,
I feel that way too. I feel like you can really kind of embrace who you are and be you, and you're not sweating the other stuff as much like you would in your 20s and 30s.
Totally. You're just not worried about what everyone else thinks.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Cel. It's amazing.
It is
exactly.
Amazing. Well, I thank you so much for being on. How can people find you, or how can they connect to you or set an appointment with you?
Yeah. So we have a website. The name of the practice is Premier Gynecology and Wellness. We are in sort of center Charlotte on Randolph Road, right near Ortho Carolina, if you know where that is, near Uptown, kind of between Cotswold and Uptown. Our website is premiergynecologyandwellness.com. You can find us on Facebook. We have an Instagram account. You can call the office. You can message through our website. We are accepting new patients. Dr. Graham, who's not on this, Dr. Heather Graham podcast is, she's got lots of availability in the next few months because she's just getting kind of established with the practice. You can call us. You can email us. We would be happy to help.
Well, thank you so much. And I really
You're so
appreciate
welcome.
Yeah, thank you for coming
It was fun.
on. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. If you like the podcast, please like and share this with other women in your life. You can find out more about SweatNet on sweatnet.com or follow them on Instagram at SweatNet and SweatNet Charlotte. You can follow me personally on Instagram at Cel Smart. Stay tuned for the next episode of the SweatNet Be Amazing podcast.